Welcome, everybody. Hello.
Hi.
Thanks for coming, and let's really thank the candidates for all the hard work that they're putting into this. We appreciate them showing here, and we appreciate that all the hard work that they put into this. And I know it's a huge time suck for everybody to run for office, and we appreciate everybody working their way up to this end of the district. And we especially appreciate them doing double duty today. They've got another forum in Edinburgh in a few hours. So, but I figured while we had everybody up in this end of the district, we'd just take advantage of that. So, just like to say that, just kind of reiterated this morning, I followed a pickup truck with a Trump 20 sticker on it. Pointed out just how much work we've got to do to get ready for this year's election. So gives us impetus and gives us a reason to get out there and work. I know he had another bumper sticker on it that said, with a picture of Obama, it said, #1 gun salesman of the year. So we need to be able to get out there, be aware of the issues, and make sure that we're clear and working to make everything known to the public. A lot of people aren't even aware that there's a primary, let alone a general election coming up this fall. So we need to get the word out there. We're working. Fortunately, we've got plenty of press here. We're trying to get the word out. So watch the websites, watch the newspapers, and be prepared to talk the issues with everyone. Get your friends in. By the way, you might be contacted. We're doing an outreach committee this year. They're going to be reaching out to people to have house parties and try and bring their neighbors in. So we're going to try and do a one-on-one approach and get neighborhoods involved, get people out there. So at any rate, let me introduce Tristan Shields. He was a candidate last fall for House of Delegates from the 18th district. Sorry about that. He's the vice chair of the Culpeper Democratic Committee. So he's going to be moderating and taking care of everything. So thank you.
Whoa, thank you guys very much. All right, so I'm going to real quick explain how the forum is going to work and hopefully how long it's going to take. So I have a bunch of questions here. I'm going to ask you guys. You're going to answer them. It's pretty simple. The way, so there was a random drawing beforehand to determine the order. So Charlotte's going to start, then Peter, then Jennifer, then Sergio, and then we're going to round robin it. And the next question, Peter will start, etc. like that. You'll each have 2 minutes to answer the question. There is a little stoplight thing over there that I can see and you can see and some of the audience can see, but and it's going to give you a warning when you get close to 2 minutes, and then when it turns red, it'll start going, and then you're going to have to, that's your cue to stop. If you hear that or me do that sound, stop. As we go through the questions, if you need the question repeated, it's totally fine to ask me to repeat the question. And if you would like to rebut something that someone has said, they've asked me to allow you to have a second to do that, but I'm going to be very strict in allowing or not allowing you to do that just because I want to make sure all 4 of you get a chance to speak on the subject and we don't go insane out of time and only answer 1 question. So y'all ready? Are you guys ready? Yeah. Are you guys ready? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So you're each going to get a minute before we start with the questions to do a little intro, and we're just going to start in this order that we did the random drawing. So Charlotte, if you're ready, are you guys ready over there with the clock? Or just whatever, one minute, you got it. So and if you have a little, you can take that mic off that stand if you want to, if it's too high. There you go. Okay, you good to go?
Hello?
You're good.
Okay, hi, my name is Charlotte Moore. I've lived in Southwest Virginia my entire life. I have 2 children. Christy and her husband Reese are both in healthcare. My son Bradley served 9 years in the United States Navy, and he's now taking advantage of his vocational training in welding. I am a small business owner. I've been a realtor for over 30 years. I now serve on the TAP board of directors, which helps the low-income people in Roanoke, Total Action for Progress. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here.
Good morning, y'all. I'm Peter Vall.
Paulson. I'm born and raised in Roanoke, Virginia, where I live with my husband Malcolm and our rescue dog Rula. I'm an ex-union organizer, so I've fought for workers' rights and fair wages. I'm a former EMT, so I know how our healthcare system works. And I also know that we put corporate profits over people these days, so we need to find a solution for that. I've also been stood up for civil rights. I've fought for gay marriage here in America and in Ireland. I'll stand up for women's rights and also access to the ballot for everybody. And I'm also an economic planner, so I'm focused on how we can bring our district into the 21st century, have an economy that creates good paying jobs for everybody. That's the future that we'll talk about today.
Oh, please silence all cell phones. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Jennifer Lewis. I live in Waynesboro, and I'm running for the congressional seat in the 6th District. And you might be wondering, why am I running? So I'm running because I've been on the front lines of all the fights that we care about for the last 10 years. I've been very active in standing up for LGBTQI rights, for reproductive rights, for the protection of our forest and farmlands. I've been fighting against the abuse of eminent domain, and I'm a strong supporter of private property rights. And I also believe that we need Medicare for all. We need to legalize hemp and marijuana. And we also need to focus on our public education system. We need to fully fund our public education system. And I believe that doing that with through the marijuana legalization is a way to funnel in some of the money to our public school system. So I'm about out of time, so here's Sergio.
So my name is Sergio Coppola. I'm from Bridgewater, Virginia. I grew up in Bridgewater, Virginia. My dad is Naples. He's from Naples, Italy. And he came over, met my mom, started at a time pizzeria, and a small business owner. I graduated from James Madison University with a degree in computer science, business, and politics. And while I studied national and international healthcare. And when I graduated, I determined that I wanted to fix healthcare in America. And that's why I started running for, planned to run for office, because we need to have more accessible, affordable healthcare in this country. I have plenty other stanzas which we're going to discuss, and I have on my website. I've taken a moderate candidate approach to the congressional race, and I believe that that's what we need to have to be successful in the general election for 2018.
All right. So I've neglected to mention this before, but clapping is great, but no more clapping. Okay, we're gonna focus on the questions, and we have a lot to talk about, and I want to make sure we get through it. So even if you're a big supporter and you love everything one of these candidates say, keep it down. And if you don't, I'm gonna go like this. That means you're in trouble. Also, I want to let you guys know, you do not have to stand. If you want to sit, that's fine. It could get awkward to go up and down, up and up. And so like, whatever, if you want to stand, that's fine. You want to do tap dance, I don't care. But you don't have to. All right, so we're gonna get started with our first question. It's about jobs, that's why I messed it up. You ready? Yes. All right, so here's the question. What policies would you propose to encourage economic development and generate well-paying jobs in the Valley? Charlotte.
First of all, I'd like to say that most of our small business owners contribute to our revenue, to our tax revenue. Is this on?
Got it.
All right. Okay. Most of our tax base comes from small business owners. We need education. We need the minimum wage to start increasing so families can make it and provide for their own families. Broadband. Everyone needs broadband. We need to work really diligently to get broadband to every single area so we all will have the same opportunities. There are programs that we can put into individual regions, like the Gauntlet, which is like Shark Tank, that will provide an opportunity for the people who live in the regions to see what they can give back to their community, see what interests they have and what experience they have, and that they can contribute to jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. So, Peter.
Yeah, so I think Charlotte hit on small business, and I think that's a really important thing here in the Valley. and in our country in general, we've let corporations take free reign. If you look in Roanoke, we have a 20% poverty rate and a 4% unemployment rate. That shows that people aren't making enough money to get out of poverty. And what's the number 2 employer in our district? Walmart. It's a company that typically pays minimum wage and gives people 32 hours a week so they don't have to pay for health benefits. So what we need to do is make it easier for small businesses to be created. It's much easier for us to grow our own economy than it is for some company to come in and start it here in the 6th district. So what do we need to do that? We need to have infrastructure. We need rural broadband so that our local businesses can be local and global. We need to have better rail and road networks so that we can get goods in and out of our district efficiently and easily. Those things will help our small businesses grow and make it attractive for small businesses to be in this area. We also have to focus on our small farms. They're small businesses too, and we have to start working on how we can rebuild regional farming infrastructure so that local growers can sell to local markets again. That will help us, our small farmers, in moving up the value chain, being able to make more money off of their produce, and that makes it more viable for farming, so then more people will get into that industry again. I also, the minimum wage is a huge thing for me. As a former union organizer, I know how to make a balance between corporate profits and fair wages and benefits. That does exist, and I've helped negotiate that, and that's what we need to be doing as a government, is making sure that corporations are paying their fair share, but that they're also paying their workers the appropriate amount. Those are kind of my economic ideas in a nutshell. We don't have too much longer, but that's how we're going to start to change things here in the 6th.
Thank you. Jennifer, when you're ready.
Thank you. So in the 6th district, healthcare employs about 4 times more than finance and insurance combined. So we need to be focusing on healthcare. We've got a great school in the Fishersville area that's schooling new nurses. And in my mental health field, I often discharge folks from state psychiatric hospitals into assisted living facilities and nursing homes, both of which are hard to come across. And as our population is aging, we need more and more of those type of facilities, which will in turn create jobs. Also, the solar industry employs more people than the oil, gas, and coal industries combined. So we need to focus on renewable energy. That would be a great job starter in the 6th district. And also supporting small farmers. I would support a farm bill that would allow farmers to directly sell to their consumers. I'm a farmer's daughter myself, and we had about 70 head of cattle, so we were a small family farm. So I want to go to Washington and be the voice of our rural farmers.
Thank you. Sergio.
So absolutely, I agree with a lot of the things that have been said on over here. When it comes down to the economy and jobs, when we look on over, I've been to a couple job fairs and looked at what was needed and what's going on in our district, and it ties into trades and education. Ties into that as well. A lot of people, we have a lot of jobs available in our district, but we don't have the workforce to fit those jobs. And the reason is because we are focusing more on higher education with those high expenses than we do training the people that we need within our district to fit the job. So community colleges and vocational education works with the businesses in our area. They design courses to fit the needs that we need. So we need to have more access, free, I made a statement on having free vocational, and I know it's going to tie into the next question, I've seen it in there, but it is really important. I've already, originally when I started off on my campaign, focused on saying that free vocational and community college is a great way to get more people working in our district and fit the jobs that we have available in our district. Stating for healthcare, I agree with that. Healthcare is a big deal. If a candidate is not making healthcare a priority, make them make that a priority, because that deals into with your accessibility, affordability, the fact it changes your financial security on what we have for healthcare. You have a lot more money, even as business owners. Business owners, a person came up to me, I do have a bit more time, good. A person that owns a business came up to me and he goes, I'm planning on buying this business. He's into healthcare field, he's looking into therapy, like therapeutic, So he asked me, he goes, but the problem is that me buying this business, I can't afford to pay the health care for my workers. What can I do? And I grinned at him and I looked at him and said, well, I'm making a healthcare plan, a public buy-in option. That'll help take the expense off you, get people that health care, and that's not something that your business is going to be limited on. So I'm going to stop.
Thank you very much. All right. Oh, that's the sound. Okay, got it. I thought it was a car outside, but it wasn't. If it sounds like there's a car outside, it means stop. All right, so both Charlotte and Sergio touched on this a little bit, but this next question is about education. So Peter, we're going to start with you, all right? Both colleges and vocational training are becoming more critical to achieving economic success. Costs for both keep rising. What do you propose to help our young people gain access to affordable education without saddling them with enormous debt?
So one of the big problems that we see in our economy and in general in this country is that we have a huge amount of student debt. I think it's over $1 trillion worth of student debt, and I think that's one of our next crises. I myself have $65,000 worth of student loans that I actually pay more interest on those than I do my mortgage. If we want kids to be successful, not just in college but in vocational schools, we have to lower the burden. We also have, I think it's in community colleges, 35% of kids can't afford their housing and their food. So what we need to start doing to help our economy and make sure that people can buy houses and start families when they come out of school is to start subsidizing public education. We need to start with community college because those are people that can get trained and go right into the workforce and have an economic benefit the next day. We also need to be having zero interest loans. There's no reason that we are paying high interest rates on these loans that are helping us get an education that's going to improve our country and improve our economy again. We also need to create resources for working students. I was talking with a gentleman from Dabney Lancaster Community College, and a lot of the problems that they have are that people are working and they want to try and change into a new field that may make them more money, or it's just something that they like to do better. And they have children, they have busy lives, and there's no childcare that they can have provided to them. So it makes it harder for them. So we have to be thinking about what are those resources outside of just student loans that we can be giving kids and people to be successful to change their career and make a brighter future for themselves.
Thank you, Peter. Jennifer.
So in this country, we only spend about 6% of our national budget on education, and that is a shame. We expect our teachers to pay out of pocket for school supplies, and I don't know about how many of you in this room have a job where you have to take your own supplies to work. I don't have a job like that. So we need to be supporting our public education all the way from pre-K all the way up to community college and vocational opportunities. And the way to do that, like I said in my opening remarks, is to legalize marijuana. In Colorado, they put $54 million into the public school program just through marijuana taxes. So I would support an infrastructure bill that would include repairing our schools as well. I live in Waynesboro, like I said, and our high school is literally crumbling apart. It's toxic with asbestos, and there's cracks in the walls. And it makes kids not respect their education. So we need to have good, safe schools as well. So I support free community college. Like Peter, I have student loans myself. And because I grew up on a dairy farm, I was able to access different grants and different funding. But after 9/11, those Pell Grants actually decreased. So a lot of my debt came from my last 2 years in college. And throughout college, I was lucky enough to do a work-study program where I worked for minimum wage, and part of my paycheck went to my college bill, and part of it I got to take home. But that still wasn't enough for me to buy my books and all of that, because like I said, I was born and raised on a farm, and anybody that's a farmer knows that they don't really have a lot of access money to send to their kids going to college. So I also had to work another job outside of the campus. I worked at KFC, again, another minimum wage job, just to get by. So I have lived that life, and I want to go to Washington and make it better for other people.
Thank you, Jennifer. Sergio.
Yeah, so I've partaken in all of that. I started when I graduated from high school, I went into vocational education, started working in IT, got a computer repair and networking because that's where the jobs were in the IT. Not so much around close to 2011. And then those dwindled down, and I ended up going to community college, which was a great experience because towards the end of it, community college got me involved into wanting to be a representative. I got involved in the Student Government Association, realized that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to help people, and I got that experience just on the community college level. And so it changed my degree path when I went over to JMU. There's a lot of students that transfer and use community colleges to get to a four-year institution as well. So giving those free access, which we have the ability to do, we can fund vocational and community college education, and that's a great way to start lowering that debt on students. Like I said before, students that get out of a university and have that kind of college debt, you can't settle for a minimum wage job. That's another reason why you don't have those people going to the workforce, because they're like, how can I get a minimum wage job and pay my college debt? I can't. I have to go and keep on searching for a more, a higher paying position just to be able to pay my bills. So working towards education, making it free, we have the ability to do that, and we need to do that for our students, and that helps get the workforce out there, helps lower the education costs, and we as representatives need to be fighting to fund those programs.
Am I gonna have to hit this thing? Whose phone is that? That's all right. It's okay. Next time I'm gonna hit this thing though. All right, Charlotte.
Virginia Western Community College in Roanoke has a program called CCAP, and they helped the middle class parents get a college education in Virginia at the community college. I think that's a great idea. It's based on income. It's based on some other things too, as far as how the student does academically. This would help a lot of students get their foot into a master's degree, bachelor's degree, or some kind of academic field where they want to be. I'm also a huge believer in vocational education. I think in high school, even employers could come to high schools and see what students are taking as far as vocational training in the high schools and get them prepared and ready for a job when they get out of high school, if that's the course they want to take. I also would like to see us talk about K through 14 education and funding for that too. So that would really help vocational training and also economic jobs, and also if you wanted to go into the academic field, you could also do that. So scholarships, more vocational schools in high schools and also in colleges to get people ready for the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. All right, so we're going to move on to the next question, and I just want to remind all the candidates, if you want me to repeat the question, totally just ask and I will repeat it. It's not going to count against your time or anything like that. So now we're going to start with Jennifer on this question. You actually touched on this a little bit before, but I wonder if you can get a little bit more specific about rural healthcare. Access to affordable healthcare, especially in rural areas, is becoming more challenging as costs and insurance premiums keep rising. What steps would you take to help reduce costs and provide access to healthcare and health insurance for more people?
Thank you. So, like I've said before, was born and raised on a dairy farm, so the closest hospital was about 35 to 40 minutes away. When I got sick once, went to the emergency room and got sent home with a prescription, and I was allergic to that prescription. So my mom had to rush me to the emergency room. And since it was so far away, it was extremely scary and frightening, but also I was getting sick the whole entire drive there. So we need to have more rural healthcare facilities, and it's a one-stop shop. So people can go there and get their primary care, the psychiatric care, any addiction help that they need. We need all of those places in all of our rural areas. And thankfully, our governor signed a bill recently that gave nurse practitioners the right to practice without doctor supervision, which is going to obviously add a lot more providers into our network, and that's going to improve access to care as well. And I know we'll probably get to this later in the next maybe two more questions, but I support Medicare for all. I think that that's the only way that we're really going to bring down out-of-pocket costs and the cost of prescription drugs. I currently have decent health care with my job, And anytime I have to get blood work done, it's at least $80 out of pocket, which might not sound like a whole lot of money, but $80 every couple of months, it really adds up. So it's something that hits home for me, so I will go to Washington and fight for accessible health care for all and Medicare for all.
Thank you, Jennifer. Sergio.
All right, so healthcare is my bread and butter. I focused it in college. I did a lot of studies on it. There are a lot of things that people don't know about healthcare. So, this is what I've been going around and trying to tell people, enlighten them, tell them that our healthcare system, I created the dual care plan as a public buying option. We have the opportunity to make it to Congress. There are a lot of congressional representatives pushing a public buying option. When you have more candidates saying and pushing that's what they want to make affordable health care in our areas with, you're more likely to get it passed through Congress. What people don't know, in the single payer system, which I supported Bernie Sanders in the way that he was moving forward and saying about single payer, but what people don't know is that America rates 37th in the world. Canada, which is what our example for single payer has been, is rated 30th in the world. And they monitor that on accessibility, affordability, and quality. So while we're saying that we want a Canadian system that ranks 30, we're still not in the top 10. The studies have shown that. The World Health Organization did their research, and those are where the statistics came out and where the numbers came out. It was there. So, a public buying option, which the countries in the top 10 don't have full-blown single-payer systems. They're not. Their systems don't work that way. So that's what I pushed, was a dual care plan and a public buying option at 9% of your income. That's what affects most people. That's how you put in an affordable plan, is based on your income, to put that 9% public buying option in. There's no deductibles, there's no co-pays, you get a government card, you're able to go wherever to get, which means the closest. That's what helps rural areas too. Pushing more incentives to getting these hospitals in those areas and you being able to have access and them working with a government plan, but you have the option to buy in. That's how we increase the quality of healthcare in America, is having that public buying option.
Thank you, Sergio. Charlotte.
We do need more affordable health care in rural areas and more doctors. I would recommend that right now that we need to take a really hard look and critique the Affordable Care Act, make it more affordable for our citizens, and make it more user-friendly for our doctors so we can all take advantage of it. I don't think anyone really has sat down and critiqued it and read it, and I know that there has to be things in there that we can really go forward on and reduce the cost. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlotte.
You know, access to healthcare in rural areas is really tricky. There are multiple reasons why people don't get healthcare out there. One is, of course, the lack of healthcare providers and those that are doctors practicing in rural areas. Some of that is privacy, because sometimes your doctor is your friend and they know everybody else in the town, so it can be kind of a lack of privacy that prevents people from coming. But I think number one is the insurance cost. You know, my cut's not that bad. I'll be fine. I can just stay here and it'll heal. Then it gets an infection and it gets worse from there. And why did we do that? Because we didn't want to pay, you know, $100 to go see the doctor. That's why I think that Medicare X is the best way to go with making sure that we get a public option out there as soon as possible. The Medicare X plan is a public option based on the Medicare networks. So Medicare is in every county and every locality of this country already. It also has networks in every hospital in this country. So that network is already built in, and what we'd be doing is building a public plan that would be available to anyone. It starts out in 2020 in localities like Roanoke and the 12 localities in our district that only have one insurer or no insurer in their marketplace. And that's to help increase competition so that if Anthem is in there, they can't just move your premiums up 20%. This program, it reimburses doctors at the rate that they want to be reimbursed. It also allows the government to negotiate with drug companies under Medicare Part D so that we can get lower prescription drug costs as well. This is a plant that can be used almost immediately, in just a couple years, and we can expand it. After that, it'll go to small businesses in other counties, and then it'll be through all the counties all throughout the country. So this is what I see as the next step past Obamacare. It's the next step towards that single payer.
That's it. It's the car sound. That means you're done. All right, so if you'd like to do a rebuttal, now would be the time, since all of you have asked. And I can give you like 1 minute to do a rebuttal. Would you like to do a rebuttal?
Absolutely.
All right, so Sergio's going to do a rebuttal. It's going to be 1 minute.
So the one thing I would just want to indicate, just so there's no confusion about, even the Medicare X plan, is that the thing that is left out when those kind of statements are made are, when it comes to a public buy-in option, or even when it comes into single payer, because Bernie was attacked about Medicaid, Medicare, and all those things as well. These other suggested programs automatically do those things. It's not like the Medicare program is going to disappear and we're not going to use that system. Insurance companies already use those systems. So a public buy-in option, single payer, they're all going to be using those same methods as the Medicare X plan, just to let everyone know.
Thank you. Would anyone like to respond to that or anything else? All right, we're going to move on to the next question. And Sergio, you got the hot potato, so it's your question. All right, so this is very important in this area, the environment. Clean air and clean water are vital to our health and economy in the Shenandoah Valley. What will you do to protect the environment?
All right, so I believe that all of us candidates up here agree, though, that we are against pipelines. They're not methods towards clean energy. We all agree on that. And when we go to Congress as congressional representatives, that's what determines how do you influence that. Well, instead of alienating organizations, corporations, and such, what we need to do is be reaching out to them and being like, we're not going to give you tax incentives for making dirty energy. We want to work with you in promoting clean energy methods. That's what we need to do. And blocking dirty energy creation. So that's what I intend to do. That's been my stance. I've agreed with that statement all along. I've never been against it. And I haven't taken any corporate money towards any of those organizations. I haven't taken pledges against them, but I have not received, and it will not receive any money from those organizations. I'm just not taking an official pledge against them. So we need to work with these companies and we need to promote clean energy and do that in Congress. And if it comes to even banning pipelines, which who knows if we'll be successful in doing that or not within Congress because there's a lot of money involved, but I will not support legislation towards dirty energy methods. I am a strong believer that we need to work hard towards making clean energy affordable and accessible to everyone.
Thank you, Sergio. Charlotte, you're up next.
What will I do to protect the environment? Just about anything. We need an EPA that will work all over the world with policies, because air doesn't just stay in another country or here. We breathe their air. We need renewable energy. We need to focus on keeping our waterways clean. I agree with Sergio, no pipelines. We're fighting one right now in Roanoke, and it's been a real issue. Totally for those people who are opposing that, the eminent domain that changed in 2012 because Ken Cuccinelli said that we could use pipelines or private industry for public use if the public used it. And whether they're going to use these pipelines or not is still up in the air. I really do not think so. So we need to fight for our environment because it keeps everyone safe. We need to fight for our planet, our next generation, our children. There's so many things, and there are things that we can do locally too. Every day, clean the rivers, keep the plastic out, try to not use plastic bags, balloons, don't set balloons off. Just many things that we personally can do that I try to do every day and keep our environment safe. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlotte. Peter.
So I, like everybody else, am opposed to the pipelines. I think that they're bad for our economy, bad for our environment, bad for our people, and bad for our property rights. But I'm not just opposed to the pipeline. What I'd like to do in Congress is create a trust fund. If these pipelines do come through and there is a disaster, we have to have a way to clean up our rivers afterwards or deal with whatever natural disaster happens from these pipelines. And so I'd like to put on a tax on our natural gas, a small tax that would go into a fund that can be used for environmental remediation and to help with any natural disasters that may occur from that, any accidents. I also think that we need to look at the way we're dealing with FERC. It's a lot of oil industry people that are on that, and it seems to be a pretty good rubber stamp on these pipelines. We have 19 being built all throughout our area, not just the 6th District, but Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and all that. And they're in this fight with us together. Of course, with that, we need to be moving towards renewables so that we don't need pipelines. We need to be ending oil subsidies, and we also need to make sure that we have a strong EPA that makes sure that when we do build these things, that they are following the strictest regulations so that our Earth will be clean for not just us, but the future generations after us. And I also believe in carbon pricing. I think that it was just yesterday, I believe, that our carbon concentration has reached a dangerous level on Earth. Dangerous level. That's not good. And if we want to really change things and we want to really make sure that we're reducing the carbon that we have in the air, we have to start putting a price on it, because it's basically putting a price on our future.
Thank you, Peter. Jennifer.
So the environment has been my #1 issue since I was in 5th grade, when I started my first environmental group. I'm currently president and founder of Friends of Augusta, which is a pipeline opposition group. And I've been on the front lines for the last 4 years fighting against the Atlantic Coast Pipeline and fighting against the abuse of eminent domain. I also suggest and recommend that FERC, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, is made up of also environmentalists and scientists should be on the board, which currently there are none. And right now, we have 59 toxic waste sites in our district, and we have an EPA that does not believe in climate change. So again, we go back to who are we putting in charge of our environmental regulations? So I'm also an elected member of the Headwater Soil and Water Conservation District. So I'm working with farmers every day and installing best management practices on their land. And we're seeing the effects. We're seeing that the bay has better numbers and less E. coli in it, which is awesome. So we want to continue to work on that. So these pipelines would be horrible for our environment and for private property rights, but it's a bigger issue than just these pipelines. We need to keep our rivers clean and our air clean for all of us. So I will be a very strong, fierce defender of our environment in Washington, as I've been since about 5th grade.
Thank you, Jennifer. Does anyone have any rebuttals? We're actually moving kind of quick, which is nice, so if you guys want to yell at each other, I'm fine with it. All right, okay, so we're going to move on to the next question. Charlotte, we're going to start with you. This question is about Social Security and Medicare, which we have spoken a little bit about, but hopefully we can get a little bit deeper in there. Many people depend on Social Security and Medicare, but we are told that these programs are at risk. What will you do to ensure these vital programs remain fully funded and available for future generations?
Well, being the oldest one up here at this table, I can tell you, we paid for Social Security and Medicare. We've paid for it our entire lives, the ones of us who have worked for it. It is an entitlement. It is not a benefit for us. We need to fight for it. I intend to fight for it and make sure that everyone gets what they deserve for what they have been paid for many years. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Yeah, so I'm of the millennial generation, and a lot of us are worried about whether or not we will have Social Security when we get older. I pay into that program every day whenever I'm working, and so we want to make sure that it's sustainable in the long term. Now, I will say that the system has been tested by the baby boomers. They're our largest cohort of population, and so we're starting to learn what that looks like when a bunch of people start to retire, and there's a lull after that, and then there's the millennials again, which would be another big cohort. So what we need to do is start looking at how that has played out. What's the evidence of how these payments are being made and how much money is left in our Social Security account, so that we can start to see and make better decisions about how we want Social Security to go on into the future. It's a plan that was made in the 1920s and it hasn't deviated that much. And so we have to take the evidence and start saying, okay, how can we make this a more sustainable long term so that people my age are able to have it when we retire. And it is a huge thing, especially for our district. I know a waitress in Roanoke, and she's 58 years old. She works full-time at a clothier, making $15 an hour, but she also has to work 4 nights a week as a waitress just to pay her bills. And so when she's 58 right now, when she turns 65, is she going to have a retirement? And what does that look like for her? And there are so many people around our district that that's a huge question. So when I get to Congress, I want to make sure that we have a strong Social Security system. As I said, with our Medicare X, of course I want to have Medicare, and I want to, with the Medicare X plan, the profits from people buying the plan actually goes back into Medicare, so that helps to make it more sustainable over the long term.
Thank you, Peter. Jennifer.
So in our district, we have about 75,000 people, which includes about 10,000 kids who don't have health insurance right now. And that's a disservice to all of us, to our entire society. So my belief is that the only way to solve that problem is Medicare for All. I support Congressman Ellison's Expanded and Improved Medicare for All Act. And I know we were talking about Social Security, but as a mental health worker, I work with folks who are on Social Security disability. So I want to talk about that for just a quick second. The standard check for someone on disability is $750 a month. So when my clients are being discharged back into the community, I'm having to access extra funding for housing, extra funding for food, extra funding for medications. So this one check that they're getting for $750 is just not enough. So I will fight for not only the protection of Social Security, but also to increase the Social Security disability, because no one can live on $750. And not only are we making them live on $750, but all the work that goes into applying for extra help, for medication, and affordable housing. And I know that I think that's a question down on the list too, so I won't get into that right now. But also going back to the Medicare for All, that will bring down our drug costs. If we're able to negotiate the prescription drug costs, that's going to save us about $160 billion in the next 10 years. So to not do that is, again, just a disservice to our district and our country.
Thank you, Jennifer. Sergio.
There is no excuse for congressional representatives not to take care of our people. There is no reason. We determine the budget. We determine how we spend the money to go on out there, and there is no excuse. Our Social Security and Medicare should not be in jeopardy. Just shouldn't. We have the ability as congressional representatives to do the budget and make sure that we take care of our people. Now, one statement that I've made before many times, we focus a lot on these additional programs, like Medicare, like the CHIP program. There are many other subsidy programs out there, but do you know the reason why we have those programs? Is because we have a poor quality healthcare system. And that's the reality. If we had a higher quality healthcare system, all of those needs would be met. You wouldn't need additional programs because they would be covered under a better quality healthcare system. And so that's what we're saying. We all know that we need, I've told you the stats, I've told you the numbers. And so fix your healthcare system. Try to aim for top 10 in the world for American healthcare. And that's how we fix those problems for those subsidy programs, because they would be already covered by a better healthcare system. So I agree, we need to, as representatives, make sure that we provide for the general welfare of people, because that's in the Constitution, and that is our responsibility as representatives.
Thank you, Sergio. Any rebuttals on that? No? Okay. All right, so the next question is to Peter, correct? I got that right, yeah. Not your name, then it's your question. I know your name. All right, so this is a tough one. Gun safety. Gun violence is overwhelming schools and neighborhoods. What do you propose to do about this situation?
I guess we're skipping affordable healthcare.
Oh, sorry.
Affordable housing.
No, I think on my sheet, we'll get there, don't worry. I have it on my sheet, but it's not my fault.
Yeah. So gun violence. Actually, I was up here in Front Royal about a month ago at the Vigil for the Parkland students. And it was there that I kind of wanted to walk the walk. A lot of times we kind of go to our corners and we don't talk to each other when it comes to gun owners and Democrats. When I go to a door and it's a gun owner, they're going to tell me I'm going to take their guns, and we know that that's not true as Democrats. So we have to talk to each other first off, and that's something that I did. And imagine that. I talked with this person with an NRA shirt on, and we came to agreement on universal background checks. That's what we need to be doing as a community and as Democrats, is we need to be reaching out to our gun-owning friends and start coming up with common sense ideas on gun safety. In Congress, what we can be doing is, I think we can be banning bump stocks, banning large magazines. If it takes you 30 shots to kill a deer, you may want to go fishing. We also, armor-piercing bullets, those are not necessary. So there are some things that we can be doing right now. And I think, of course, background checks, expanding our background checks, making sure that they're funded properly, that's a huge issue that we could be dealing with in Congress. And also, I'll speak just really briefly about the Dickey Amendment. I guess technically they reversed it on the day that the march was in DC. The Republicans wanted to do something, right? But they didn't really do anything. They reversed it, but they also didn't put any funding behind it. So the Dickey Amendment prevents the government from doing any research into gun violence through the CDC. And so while they may have reversed it, they have done nothing beyond that. So it's not, they haven't given any funding towards that research. And that's what we really need if we want to come up with good solutions. You have to have evidence. We saw that with cars. You started gathering more information about car accidents. We now have safer cars. If we start getting more information about gun violence, how it occurs, we'll have safer guns.
Speaking of cars, that's your time. Thank you. All right, Jennifer, you're up next. That was perfect.
So I support 4 major gun reforms. One is to expand background checks. We need mandatory background checks, especially when we talk about gun shows and private internet sales. And the sale of bump stocks as well. And like Senator Kaine, I support Senator Feinstein's bill to get the semi-automatic assault weapons and the large feeding capacity devices off of our streets. So bottom line is, we just want to keep these assault weapons out of the hands of terrorists, domestic abusers, and people who should not be having guns, while protecting the rights of law-abiding gun owners who want to hunt and have protection at home.
Thank you, Jennifer. Sergio.
So I've been, throughout the campaign, reaching out to both sides. That has been a big message, saying as a moderate candidate, that's what I've been doing. I've been speaking to both Democrats and Republicans on making a stance on what is the best way for us to be successful in gun legislation when we go on over to Congress. Because if you have a hard stance on the left and a hard stance on the right, you go to Congress, you don't get anywhere. You don't pass any legislation. So I said, well, the biggest thing we need to do is make sure that they are categorized appropriately. We have other weapons in the NFA categorized for silencers and such, and at the very least we need to categorize bump stocks within that category in the NFA and determine how to move forward from there. The other statement that I've been reaching out and talking to both sides and indicating is that, well, candidates want to ban AR-15s. I had a Republican the other day. I said, "You're going to vote for me?" Because I knew him from my dad's restaurant, and he goes, "No, you're a Democrat. You want to take away my guns." I said, "That's not true." He goes, "Oh yeah? I got an AR-15. I said, "That's still not true." I said, what we need to do, and what the middle ground, what we can pass is say, you need a special license for that gun. You need to show that you are stable to have that gun. And so if I give you as a responsible gun owner saying, you can't just go and buy it, but you need a license to say that you can have that, and he goes, okay. And that is the big reaction that we have throughout, finding that, what can we agree on? How can we make things safer? How can we make it less accessible to people? And that's the positions that I've taken. As I said over there, said we can categorize these weapons appropriately and have special license for you to obtain it to show that you are a responsible gun owner, other than saying ban and that's it. The last thing we said, I just wanted to ask you real quick. So, are you on banning AR-15s or not? Not anymore.
Let's save that for a rebuttal if you want to do a rebuttal on that. That's totally a fine thing to ask, but just not right now. Okay, Charlotte.
Okay, first, it is not my agenda to take away responsible gun owners' guns. I do, however, do not believe that anyone needs an assault weapon to shoot, target practice, or whatever. I would like to see the 1994 legislation that bans assault weapons imports and manufacture, magazines that hold over 10 rounds and add bump stocks to that reinforced. I think the crime rate went way down then, and I would like to see that come back to reality. Also, background checks. I think that we really need to try to enforce the background checks. I've read some articles lately where at gun shows people bought weapons and were not given background checks. They bought their weapon and then later on it was found out that that was not done. Also, data. I think that we need a really good data system where we put violent crimes into the system so people cannot buy weapons. And I'm talking immediately. If someone commits a violent crime on Friday night, it should go into that system, whether there's a restraining order or a violent crime committed immediately. So that person cannot go out Saturday morning and buy a weapon and do more damage than they already have. Just weapons of mass destruction, which I call assault weapons, we need to protect our students, our families, our citizens, and we need to put them first over weapons. Thank you.
Thank you. So any rebuttals on that?
Yeah.
So you got a minute to do a rebuttal. If they're going to answer, I'll give her a minute, but we're just going to stick to a minute each. We're not going to go back and forth. Okay.
I don't want to go too far in depth. So the difference of an AR-15 and a hunting rifle is just the look of the gun. I just wanted people to know that. Like, you can do the same thing with a hunting rifle that does not have that assault rifle look. But the question I wanted to ask the candidates was, and just quite firmly to understand now, are they for banning AR-15s or not? So, and I'll just make a statement that, as I said, I want a special license at the very least to these weapons. I would like to know from the candidates if they are for banning AR-15s.
So just to do this response, I'm going to give each of y'all a minute to respond. So if you want to say something more, if you just want to say yes or no, that's fine. But if you want to say something more, you can say something more. So does anyone want to respond?
Sure, I'll go first since I have the microphone.
Got it. Yeah.
No, I do not support banning AR-15s. I do support raising the age to 21.
All right. Do y'all want to, you don't have to respond, but if you want to, you can. If you feel like you've already responded, that's fine. Okay. All right. So we're going to move on then. So Jennifer, you're going to get the next question. And this one is about affordable housing. So I told you I was going to get to it. Our region has a critical shortage of affordable housing. What can Congress do to address this issue?
So I think I mentioned it earlier, is that in the infrastructure bill, we need to include affordable housing. I work in the mental health field, and when I'm not discharging folks to assisted living facilities or nursing homes or group homes, I'm helping them find apartments. And going back to them having $750 a month to spend on housing, groceries, medications, and all the other living expenses, it's impossible. So we need to increase our affordable housing, yes, of course, but also we need to increase the vouchers. We have affordable housing vouchers, housing choice vouchers, I believe that they're called, through HUD. And right now it's a 6-year wait list to get a voucher. And once you get a voucher, it is gold. You don't ever want to get rid of it. But we need to expand that. We need to let more people get onto that, that voucher list. Personally, once out of college, I worked for an organization called ACORN, and I went into neighborhoods that were predominantly in poverty and community, kind of your HUD houses, your community homes. And I organized those folks to protect their affordable housing, because the city wanted to relocate these people just kind of outside the skirts of the city. So then they didn't have access to public transportation. So when we're talking about affordable housing and where we put them, we also need to be mindful of public transportation and access to jobs.
Thank you, Jennifer. Sergio.
So yeah, essentially what you said sounds pretty good. Appropriately funding social programs. That's what we need to do. That's what it's always talking about. All these other programs that we mentioned is making sure that we are taking care of people. So when you're talking about affordable housing, well, a lot has to do with where your expenses go too. And that's not just for people that are on social programs, but that's people that are just working on out there for affordable housing. And one thing that I always tie back, because again, I believe that it's one of the most important issues in our country, is that healthcare issue, because that determines your financial security. That determines, a lot of people have dropped health insurance policies. And what is the statement that has been said? Well, if I have to choose between my health care and my mortgage or my rent to where I'm providing for my family, what are you going to choose? And so that has a lot to do with it. I mean, a lot of our issues in our country can be fixed simply by having a good quality healthcare system. And that's why I make that my priority. We'll get back to it, and it's going to remain my priority, but that's why. And so that's another way for us making sure that you can get access to affordable housing.
Thank you, Sergio. Charlotte.
HUD has changed their programs over the years as far as now investors can't have first choice at the housing that comes back on the market. They do allow the first-time home buyers for the first 30 days to buy houses, but everyone so far has said HUD, and HUD does not fund enough for their programs. And the social programs too. When we get Section 8 vouchers from the localities, HUD does not provide enough funding to make up the difference for those Section 8 vouchers from what HUD is paying. So it makes it very, very difficult for homeowners to buy or even to rent. So we need to work on HUD. We need to make sure that they get better policies and that they provide more funding for these affordable homes.
Thank you, Charlotte. Peter.
I know we're getting into this a little bit later in our priorities, but I would like to be on the Housing and Urban Development Committee in Congress. Excuse me. It's something that I know very intimately with the affordable housing. I studied it in school. I work with affordable housing every day in my job. We need to, there's this talk of vouchers, and those are actually, I think, a bad thing. Vouchers tend to be, it's almost like a modern redlining, where vouchers are only good in certain areas. They only give you so much money, and those areas may not be the best part of the city or the town or county or wherever you are. We have in Roanoke a lot of housing projects that need to be redone. We need to put a lot of money into those. I don't want to continue to do the old model of here's a bunch of affordable housing that we have 300 people in. You know who they are because you know the name of the project, and that is wrong. It creates a stigma. What we need to start doing is there's a Hope 6 program. And what this does is it mixes market rate and affordable housing together. You can't tell the difference between one or the other going through the neighborhood. But that creates a diversity and mix of people living in an area. And that destigmatizes people, and it allows people to intermingle. I think diversity is one of the best things. And so that's kind of the model we need to be going towards. We can also be using low-income housing tax credits, we call them LIHTCs. Those are a good way of creating apartment buildings that are have a certain percentage of their new units as affordable. And I did a whole paper and project on how we can start to use bus routes to build affordable housing near transportation so that people can get to those jobs that they need. I know that in Roanoke the bus runs only once every hour. So if you're not on that bus route, it's kind of hard to A, get to the bus route, but B, you have to walk to work if you miss that bus.
You're always talking about vehicles when that happens. What is going on in this?
I want to do that.
Yeah, you really got it. All right. Okay, so we're actually going to move on to our last official question that I got from the Warren County, from the Democrats who put this forward, and then we're going to move on to a few of these questions. And I just want to tell you guys, we've gotten a lot of really, really good questions. We can only do a few of them. Some of them have been covered. Some of them are very specific. And if I don't read your question, I would encourage you to afterwards go up and ask the candidates individually, because some of them drill down pretty deep and it's a little bit too deep for a broad conversation. But we're going to move on to our last question, from official question. So Sergio, this one is going to start with you. The question is priorities. What would be your highest priority upon election to the 6th congressional seat, and which committees would you prefer?
Y'all know the answer? Absolutely. Healthcare, absolutely. Number one priority. On the information pamphlet that I put on out, and that's what I go and reach out to both, like I said, Democrats and Republicans when I talk into them, the things that we agree on when it comes to priorities, and that's why I made them platform issues, was healthcare, education, and jobs. That's what you reach out with. That is what influences everybody in our district and the biggest concerns. And why do you think they're the biggest problems? Because we have the highest debt in healthcare. We have the highest debt as a country in education. So, and then we're all, trying to have jobs, and if not us, family members getting them jobs. That's why that's always been the biggest concerns. And so working within, making that my priority in Congress and in our district, along with getting, reaching out to committees when in Congress that deal with those situations and dealing with making laws that influence those decisions in those categories. Those are my priorities, and that's what I intend, not only on the campaign, but when I get into office. And like I said, that's where it is. So number one is absolutely healthcare.
Thank you. Charlotte.
Keeping every citizen in the United States and abroad safe, and that includes health care, affordable education, Interstate I-81, Interstate 81 safety, internet bullying, gun safety, and Alzheimer's care too. The people who have to take care of their loved ones with Alzheimer's can be devastated for their future and for their loved ones who they have to take care of. Broadband, just every single thing, tariffs, immigrants, healthcare, and of course the environment. We need all of these things require safety, and we need to deal with each and every one of them. And if I was on a committee, I would like to be on the environmental committee.
Thank you.
So my first priority would be healthcare. It would be working across the aisle to try and get Medicare X passed as soon as possible, because that's what we need. We need affordable healthcare. It's affecting us every day. Our premiums went up 20% last year. I can only imagine they'll do the same thing next year. After that, I think that we need to work on infrastructure. This area has been kind of disconnected. We don't have broadband. 81's a mess. It's hard to get in and out of the 6th district. So infrastructure is going to be critical, not just for our everyday lives, but for making sure that businesses can grow in this area. When I go to Congress, I would be on the agriculture committee because we have a lot of, our district is rural and agricultural. And so I want to make sure that I'm fighting for our farmers. I also want to be there making sure that we're able to push the USDA food hubs and our rural development fund. Those are things that I want to make sure that we're putting into the budget and funding appropriately so we can get resources here to the area. And then, as I said before, I'd like to be on the Housing and Urban Development Committee, because that's a lot of what my life's work has been on in building cities and towns and rural communities. And so my insights will be best used there. And we also have cities in our district, so I want to get both the urban and rural parts of our district covered and make sure we get the resources we need.
Thank you, Peter. Jennifer.
So my number one issue is campaign finance reform. Might not sound as exciting as healthcare, but think of why we don't have good healthcare. Why are our costs so much? Because of the insurance and pharmaceutical lobby. Why are we facing pipelines and a disastrous environment? Because of the lobbies that we have. When we have so much power and influence that's given to special interests in these big corporations and lobbyists, it takes away the power that we have as citizens. So I want to restore democracy, give the power back to the people by tackling campaign finance reform. Once we figure that out, I would love to tackle nonpartisan redistricting, gerrymandering. We all know how horrible it is, and like Steve that announced you didn't know what district that you ran for in the House of Delegates.
Yeah.
Because it's so hard to figure that out. And when I was helping with the Angela Lynn and Michelle Edwards campaigns down in Augusta County, every door I knocked and every phone call I made, I had to explain to them, who's your current representative? Where exactly do you live? Oh, this is a person that you should be voting for. So we need a nonpartisan redistricting. And then outside of that is voting rights. I want to address voter suppression and voter discrimination as well. And when I go to Washington, I would love to sit on the Agriculture Board, the Natural Resources, and the Ethics.
Thank you. Man, y'all, we are so ahead of schedule. So you did a good job. You did a really good job. All right, so we are like literally an hour ahead of schedule. So, oh yeah, would you like to do a rebuttal?
Yes.
Go ahead. So he's going to get a minute to do a rebuttal, and then anyone can have a minute to do a response or their own rebuttal.
So it's
there you go.
not technically a rebuttal. Actually, it's a compliment. And the compliment that I wanted to say was, I noticed in the beginning of our campaigns, and this is primarily directed to Peter, his priority was infrastructure. But I guess going through the district and seeing the concerns that's going on, we just heard that now his priority is healthcare. So I find that interesting. I actually appreciate it because I've passionately felt that way the whole way along, as you've heard. So hearing that he has transitioned to making that now a priority, I appreciate that statement, along with him trying to reach out to Republicans about gun reform and working that way. So I've seen transitions in his campaign that he has been doing that I've been doing consistently throughout. But it's good to see other candidates that have actually say, well, these are the concerns that I'm seeing as well, even though there's some candidates that were doing it prior. So I appreciate that, and I'm glad that he is working towards that, and that other candidates maybe can be consistent and move towards that as well.
All right, beep, beep, beep. Anyway, there we go. Thank you. So Peter, since that was mainly directed to you, I'll give you the first rebuttal if you'd like. Yep.
I've always said that healthcare is my priority. When I get into Congress, it's what I've said since the beginning. When people ask, what's the first thing you'll do when you get into Congress? It's fix the healthcare system, because it is so important. That's all I have to say.
All right. Does anyone else want to rebut? That was not supposed to be funny. That was just me saying that word. Okay. So now this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna do 2 or 3 questions from the audience. I'm going to read the questions that have been submitted, and then I'm going to give y'all did we say a minute or 2 minutes for closing statements, Steve? 2 minutes. So then y'all get 2 minutes for closing statements, and Steve will come up here, do the closing of everything, and then hopefully if you guys have time, I know a lot of people here would probably like to speak with you one-on-one. So if that's okay with you guys, that's what we're going to do? All right. So again, I said I got a lot of really great questions, but I'm going to try to keep to the more broad ones. Jennifer, you actually brought up something in your last answer that stole my thunder on this question, but it's kind of putting your money where your mouth is. That's how it is. So this question is, what will you do to get money from lobbyists, big corporations, and very wealthy individuals out of politics so that our votes and voices actually count? And what I will pair that with is another question, which is, if you win the nomination, how will you fund a competitive campaign? Because as we all know, it costs millions of dollars to run these campaigns. Where is the money going to come from? Yeah, so maybe we could start, maybe just go reverse here since she started talking about that, so we're going to end with Sergio. So we're going to go this way. Okay?
Good, yeah, okay. So I'm probably not going to answer this in the order that you asked it, but I'm very honored that I have signed pledges to not take any money from corporate PACs. When I announced, I signed the Activate Virginia pledge, which means that I will not ever take any money from Dominion or any fossil fuels. And I think that that's the only way that we're going to get big money out of politics is voting for people who are taking these kind of stances to say, I'm not taking this money. Can you repeat the second?
The second question is so the first question was, how are you going to get big money out of lobbyists and corporations out of politics in general? But the second question was, if you win the nomination, how will you fund a competitive campaign, especially out here in a district that is considered very red?
So going back to the first question a little bit more is, I also signed the Anti-Corruption Act, and that covers redistricting, voting rights, and getting big money out of politics. So again, going back to, you've got to vote for people who are willing to take that stance and say that they don't want that money, even though it would probably be much easier. And going to the second part of the question, it is going to be really hard to raise the money that's needed to win this race. in this kind of district. But I'm ready for that. I really am eager to get knocking on doors and talking with people and making that connection, because I would much rather raise just a little bit of money and win and stick to my values and my principles than to win or lose and just take a bunch of dirty corporate money. So I do fully believe that it's doable, but it's going to take everybody in this room getting in touch with all of their friends and their families and their neighbors and coworkers and spreading that message of we have to stop voting against our own best interests. And that's what a lot of people do when they vote for elected representatives who are going to take that dirty kind of money.
Thank you. So we're going to go with Peter, and then Charlotte, and then Sergio. You're going to go last.
So I think, of course, we need to end Citizens United. I think that's been terrible for our political system. And we have all these super PACs and PACs, and you can play shell games all you want with money, and the Republicans are really good at doing that. So we need to end Citizens United. I think we need to end gerrymandering. We need to make sure that our vote here in the 6th is the same as the vote in the 10th, which is the same as the vote in the 9th. You know, our district is gerrymandered so that we have less of a say in what our representative actually does. And we've seen that with Bob Goodlatte. We've seen what happens over 25 years of gerrymandering. When it comes to fundraising, we've already started to fundraise. We're the top fundraiser on the Democratic side. And what we're doing is reaching out. We have grassroots supporters. We have over 10,000 people who support our campaign online. And then we also have over 20 people from over 28 states that have donated to our campaign. Remember, we're on a federal, this is a federal position, so what we do doesn't just affect the 6th district, it affects the nation. And so we're making sure that the message is loud and clear that this is an open seat, this is a flippable district, and we need to get help. It may not be from the 6th district, it may be from just next door in the 5th, or even here in Northern Virginia. But those donations and support are going to help us to make sure that we don't have 25 more years of another Republican.
Thank you. Charlotte.
Thank you. I also will not take any money from any large corporations that want us to be bought by them. I haven't signed a pledge for anything because sometimes when I read the little fine print on some of the pledges, I don't agree with that either because it says you will do what I say. To me, that's no different. I would like to work for the ordinary person, the people, all of you, and all of the 6th District and all of the U.S. who represent us and put us to where we are because you put us there because you want us to work for you. Campaign funding, we just ask our friends and all of you to raise funds to get us to Congress so we can advertise and let people know what we're all about and what we represent and what we stand for. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Sergio.
Campaign financing. Never enough money. That's what it means. But so the thing, even going down, not just to get us to Congress, we need funding just to get down the road, get from one side of the district to the other. The thing that's misleading though, is when we say corporate money. Well, it's not just corporate money. There's organizations, and there are good organizations that donate to campaigns as well. Any kind of organized group can go and design a PAC and donate to campaigns. You know, that happens as well. So don't forget that. If you're going to take an organization money, that's hopefully you agree with what their stances are. But if you don't, grassroots is the way to go as well. But grassroots is a lot harder to fundraise. Now, I know personally my campaign finances, and yes, I haven't been making the most money. But I can tell you that I haven't received any contributions from any organizations whatsoever, whether it's PAC, whether it's corporate PAC, whether it's just a small organization to big donations where they give up to $5,000. All of my contributions have been from individuals. So it's a much harder road to do that, but it is a truly grassroots. And so, I've said that I haven't received any organizations. I'd be intrigued to hear if they've received any organizations, not just corporate organizations, but organization funding to that extent. But all of my contributions up to this point have been grassroots, local people. And I appreciate that because that's genuine too. Coming from an individual that has faith in you running a campaign, even if it's $100, $500, it means a lot because they're saying, I have faith in you. And that means a big deal to me.
Thank you, Sergio. So any rebuttals on that? Okay, all right, we're gonna move on to another question. So again, I'm trying to do the broadest questions that I received here. So Charlotte, you're next, right? I think. Wait, did I skip over here? No. We've gone off the rails. Okay, Peter's next, okay. So this is actually kind of appropriate for you. What will you do to help the LGBTQ community in our district? I swear I did not intentionally ask you that question.
I appreciate that. You know, we're very, I won't say lucky because we had to work for this, but we got marriage equality a few years ago. And a lot of people thought that that was the end of it and that, you know, all of a sudden LGBT folks are just like everyone else. Unfortunately, I can get married on Saturday and I get fired on Monday. So we need to work for an Employment Non-Discrimination Act that makes sure that that can no longer happen. It also affects our housing. You know, you can be turned away from being gay for that as well. We need to make it so that we also have the, what's it called? Sorry, the Equal Rights Amendment, so that everybody, not just gays, lesbians, and transgender, but women, everybody are on the same playing field and that everybody is equal in rights. And that's something that clearly I will stand up for as I have in the past.
Thank you. Charlotte.
Everyone is equal. Everyone has the right to love and care about and do whatever they want as long as you don't infringe on someone else's life. You should have the right to do that.
Okay, thank you, Charlotte. Sergio, sorry.
I agree. It's all about, that's, as congressional representatives, that we're supposed to do. Equality. Focus that our laws push equality for everyone. And I've been that way throughout. I've said I'm for marriage equality, I'm for women's rights. That's what we focus on. That's our responsibility as congressional representatives. And that's what it should have been, and it should have been that way all the way from the get-go, is saying that we built the Constitution for all, and that our congressional representatives need to be consistent in voting for equality for all and everyone.
Thank you, Sergio. Jennifer.
So I've been a very vocal advocate for the LGBTQAI community for the last 10 years, probably more than that because I'm older than that. I did my college internship, I forget how time flies. I did my college internship part of the summer with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and the other part of the summer was with the Human Rights Campaign, which is a national organization that fights for equality. And so I spent part of the summer going door to door talking to people about equality. The majority of it was a very good, healthy conversation, but I do have to tell you there was a few scary times where I was called horrible names and actually once chased down a driveway. So we need to pass the Equality Act, of course, but we need equality for everyone. We should not be able to discriminate against anyone for their sexual orientation, gender identity, race, any of that. So I will continue to be a fierce defender for our LGBTQA community when I go to Congress.
Thank you. Any rebuttals on that? So Steve has asked me if we could actually take a short break right now for people to stand up and get some drinks or whatever they want, like a 5-minute break, and then go over a few of these questions and come back, maybe do 3 or 4 questions, if that's all right. 4 questions? Okay, so Steve wants us to do that, so we're going to do that right now. So please don't leave. We're going to come back and do a little bit more, but if you want some water, feel free to grab some water. Or soda. All right, good. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to give you 4 questions, not all at once, just separately, like we've been doing. And then I'm going to give you 2 minutes each to do your closing remarks, and then we're going to be done. And Steve is going to come up and close this thing out. All right, so who answered the last question first?
I'm next.
You're next? Okay, I'm just going to have to leave you because it doesn't matter. Okay, so we're going to start with Peter on this one. Are you ready for a timer over there? Excellent, thank you.
I got the last.
Oh, you got, so Charlotte, are you next? I think you're next, Charlotte. So Charlotte, you're in the hot seat. All right, this is another question from the audience. How will you generate maximum Democratic turnout in November while also winning an additional 10% of normally Republican voters. So how are you gonna win? That's the question.
Talk to people, go into communities, find out what their goals are, find out what they need, find out what they expect, and what they want Congress to do for their localities. That is very, very important, because we're going to be up there representing our citizens, and we need to know what their issues are. So from farming to economic development to jobs, education, healthcare, everything, we really need to get out and let our citizens know who we are, what we represent, what our values are, and how passionate we are about them.
Thank you, Charlotte. Actually, can we do Sergio and then back around like that? Is that all right? Thank you.
So the question was, how do we win the general?
Well, pretty much. Just specifically what the question is, because I want to make sure whoever wrote it doesn't get mad at me. How will you generate maximum Democratic turnout in November while also winning the additional 10% of normally Republican voters? I guess you can include on that independents.
Why, hello.
That was a good joke. We'll talk about that later. Okay, Sergio, go ahead.
My name is Sergio Coppola, and I'm running for Congress, right? That's how it goes. I'm a moderate candidate. So that's what I've said all the way from the get-go from the campaign, is that our district needs a person middle of the roads that can reach out to both sides. We are a 2-to-1 red district. We know that. All the polls indicate that. We wouldn't have Governor Northam if it was based our district and our voting record. So while we do want to pick up the momentum and get Democrats out to vote, we also need to have a candidate that can pull that moderate vote, pull the Republican side that doesn't want to be too far right. And Cynthia Dunbar is too far right. Ben Klein is looking like another Bob Goodlatte. We don't want that. You need a moderate candidate that can pull those votes to win the general election. And I have been and will continue to be that type of candidate to not only get past the primary, to be successful in the general election. And that's the type of candidate you need for the Democratic Party.
Thank you, Sergio. Jennifer.
So, in this district, Bernie Sanders and Tom Perriello won this district. So I think this district is actually really ready and eager to vote for a progressive, forward-thinking candidate, and that's me. So going back to how do we get people to turn out and vote? First, being excited to vote. Having a candidate that you're excited to vote for is number one. And number two, like Charlotte said, is having those conversations with people. And I'm sure the other candidates are sick of this story, but I'm going to tell it again. When I was door knocking for Angela Lynn when she ran for office last year, I knocked on this man's door, and he had just had hip surgery, so he couldn't get up and answer the door. So I walked in and sat down with him, and I said, "What's your number one issue?" And he said, "Healthcare. No one should ever go broke or go without because they can't afford healthcare." So we have this great conversation, and I'm like, yes, I've got him. He's going to vote for Angela Lynn. And then he says, "And I love Bob Goodlatte." And I just paused, and probably snickered a little bit too. It's time consuming, but you have to have these conversations with people who have just voted for the Republican because that's what they've always done. That's what their dad did. That's what their grandpa did. So we need to have those one-on-one conversations and talk to people and say, what is your number one issue? What do you care about? And then line that up with who's the best candidate to tackle that issue that you care about. So like I said, it's going to be time-consuming, and I can't do every door in the 6th district, although I'll try. I'm going to need help. I'm going to need volunteers, people in this room who are going to have those kind of tough conversations with their neighbors, with their coworkers, with their family members, to say, hey, you feel this way, you're so passionate about healthcare or equality or whatever it is their number one issue, yet you vote this way. And when I said this to this man that said that he always votes for Bob Goodlatte, I said, well, wait, you just said this, but Bob Goodlatte consistently votes opposite of how you feel. You literally saw him stopping and thinking. And in his probably 70 years of life, no one had ever took the time to talk to him about that.
Thank you. It does feel like you're about to get hit by a car when that happens. So, yeah, I appreciate your reaction. Okay, Peter, thank you.
Yeah. So look, we're lucky in that we're doing a primary because that means we get to come out here and talk to all of you Democrats. So you already know that there's an election. You're going to go home and tell your friends. You're going to go tell your friends who you're voting for. You're going to get people excited just by having a primary, and I think that's great. And But what we need to do is not just go through the primary, we have to get to the general in November. And that's something that our campaign has been focused on, and we've been building up the infrastructure. I announced my run in August, before Bob Goodlatte decided to get out of the race. Because I knew that it was going to take the time to build up that infrastructure, to build a message that works in our district. And that's what I've been doing. We have over 300 volunteers that are signed up in our phone banking and canvassing for our campaign right now. So we're talking to all the Democrats. And then once this primary is over, we get to put all those people to work talking to Democrats we wouldn't normally talk to, those lean Democrats, those independents, and those people that are out in rural areas. That's a huge part of our district is rural. So it's easy to go and knock doors when you're in Front Royal or Stanton or Roanoke. It's getting those groups and organizations ready to go, fired up, to go out into rural areas and start talking to their neighbors and having conversations. Like when we did the 2017 delegate races down in Roanoke, I was amazed at how many people I would knock on their door and they would be the van may have been a little bit off, they were Republicans. But I knocked on their door and they said, well, give me that Democratic literature because I don't know if I can get along with the Republican Party anymore. And so we're seeing that change on the ground. And I think that if the main thing that people want at this point in the 6th district is somebody that's going to get something done. And that is what I plan to do. I plan to be a representative that gets stuff done, that goes out and works hard every day to make sure that we're getting the resources that we need. And that message is what's going to take us through in November and hopefully beat Cynthia Dunbar or Ben Klein or whoever the heck else they put up.
Thank you, Peter. All right, so we got 3 more questions, I think. Sergio, why don't we start with you this time, all right? We're just going to keep going around. All right, so each of you has voiced support for expanded spending for health, housing, I can't read what this says, and other special programs. Where is the money going to come from? Is it new taxes? Is it cuts from elsewhere? What is it going to be?
So I find this a very interesting question. I've spoken to other economic professors, doctorates, even that come on in there, and they said the one thing that people don't understand is that Congress, we know the soundbite that Congress designs the budget. But what we don't understand is that while designing the budget, they determine how much money goes out. You know, they are the bank through the country. They determine how much money goes out and where and how it goes to each. So when we say we can't afford it, well, that's not true, because we balance the checkbook. We put the money out there, and then we determine the revenue that comes back to help fit this fund. So the thing is that the other thing that people don't understand is they think that everything is paid by your taxes. That's not true either, because that would mean you'd have to pull in more money than you put out for the next year, and yet we're always in a deficit. So that doesn't make much sense, because then we don't have the money to pay for the next year. So as a congressional representatives, we determine how much money we put out, what programs we can provide for. So the statement that, where does the money come from? The money comes from Congress. We put out the money. We determine the budget. So don't let any representative tell you that we can't afford it, because we are the ones that make the budget. We are the one that put the money out and determine what we pay for.
Thank you. Jennifer.
So, number 1 is tackling fraud and abuse and waste. I think that would shore up a lot of money that we could tackle all of the other things like healthcare, affordable housing, but also just setting our priorities. What do we prioritize in this country and as taxpayers? And as taxpayers, we should have more of a say in that. If we want more of our tax dollars to go to social programs, we should be voting for people who want that as well. If you don't support the big military budget, then vote for people who would not keep expanding the military budget. So I think a lot of it is just tackling the waste that we have in government spending, so much waste in government spending, but also it's just setting our priorities. What do we want to stand for in this country?
Thank you, Jennifer. Peter.
So I think we've seen now twice that Republicans are trying to do trickle-down economics. We just saw that again with the tax cut here in December. It does not work. The evidence is in, it does not work. So we need to make sure that corporations just got a huge tax cut. Well, guess what? Those taxes that they were paying pay for the roads, they pay for the ports, they pay for the broadband. they pay for the infrastructure that allows those corporations to do the business that they need. So we shouldn't be cutting down to 21%. I think the taxes need to be a little bit higher on corporations. So we have to get away from this whole model of giving the people at the top tax breaks and then everybody else having to pay for it. We have to have a smarter tax system. Another part of it is economic growth. If we have better economic growth in this area, that leads to more tax revenue, that leads to more in our coffers. And then beyond that, we need to start making strategic investments. Infrastructure is a strategic investment. We may spend, let's say we spend $200 billion on it. That may end up with $500 billion in economic growth because the infrastructure is what we need for it. So being strategic about where we put our money, and then also using evidence-based decision-making. That's something that I do as a planner. We look at the data, we see what's working and what's not, and we tweak it and make decisions on where we should invest. And so that's what we need to be doing with our federal government. If a program's not working, then how can we tweak it to make it work? Or how do we get rid of it if it's never going to? I love to hear about defense spending. We're in a completely different type of warfare future, if you will. We need to be spending more on cybersecurity than we do on physical missiles and all that jazz. It's not what we do anymore. It's not how the game is played, and we've seen that by the Russians and what they've been doing to our elections. So being able to figure out how to spend the money in the best place is what we need to be doing.
Thank you, Peter. Charlotte. Beep, 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 beep. Is it good? Cool. All right, Charlotte's gonna go now.
We do need to tackle fraud and waste, first of all. Big corporations, we all need to pay the same taxes on the deficit. I talked to a friend of mine who owns a corporation last week, and he said, boy, I really got a really good tax break on my corporation. But then I looked at my personal, boy, it really sucked. So we need to and when the government shuts programs down and cuts funding for social programs, it affects every single one of us. It affects housing, tourism, which affects us because we don't have tourists coming to visit and spending money. It affects every single one of us locally, state, and federal, all the way down to the localities like you guys. So we need to take a good look at what programs we're cutting, which ones we're going to fund, and which ones serve you the best.
Thank you, Charlotte. All right, so I'm sorry, who am I on? Charlotte, you can start. Who's starting?
I started last.
You started last? Okay, so Jennifer, you're gonna start on this one. I'm gonna ask this question, but I want maybe to expand on it a little bit, just because we haven't really talked about the environment. I feel like we could talk about it a little more, considering how important it is for this area in particular, right here in the Shenandoah, going to, the Blue Ridge and all that. So the question is, what is your opinion of fracking? If opposed, what can be done with anti-regulation, anti-environment EPA that we currently have?
So of course, I could not be more against fracking. 2 or 3 years ago, I went on a fracking tour in West Virginia and saw firsthand the destruction that fracking causes. And we were driving down the street to go to a fracking site, and all along the road were these huge water buffaloes. I don't know if people know what water buffaloes are. They're big plastic water tanks. And they're all throughout people's yards. And I was like, what is this? And the tour guide said, we lost access to clean, safe water. So everybody at the end of their property line and near the road had this huge plastic water tank that the town or the fracking company would come through and fill water. And then a hose would go from the water tank up to their house. This is not how people should be living. So I will, again, just be a fierce defender for our environment when I go to Washington, because this is our only planet. We can't just keep destroying it and think that it's constantly going to be there for us in its current state. Climate change is real and it's affecting our lives every day. So we need to tackle this issue now. We should not be fracking anymore. We should not be putting in new pipelines. We should be focusing 100% on renewables. And I do think that that's possible and we can get there. And the last part about the EPA is that we have to hold them accountable, and we should only be putting people in charge of these agencies that have an environmental history. Scott Pruitt does not have an environmental background that most of us feel comfortable with him leading the EPA, and especially with him not believing in climate change. So again, we need to vote for people who will put people in charge of those agencies who will be supportive of the environment, forward-thinking, cleaning up our rivers. Like I said before, we've cleaned up the Chesapeake Bay by dumping a bunch of federal and state money into it. And I'm sorry, I won't be able to finish that question.
All right, Peter, you're next.
I think we can all agree that fracking is terrible for the environment and it's terrible for our people. I always love the person who turns on their sink and it like catches on fire. I'm sure some of y'all have seen those videos. That's because of fracking. And fracking, it's not just where it's happening, it can affect people up to 250 miles away. That's a long way away. That's a big area of destruction. And so we need to make sure that we're reducing fracking. I think that we also need to make sure that we're not giving up our national parks for fracking and oil exploration. There's a reason why the Saudis and all that have started to diversify their economy, because they see that oil is a kind of dying industry, and we need to figure that out here in the U.S. We shouldn't be making as many investments in fossil fuels as we are, and that goes along with fracking. That's a huge detriment to our country that we're starting to, we're still letting that happen. Yeah, when it comes to the EPA, I mean, we can complain all we want, but Scott Pruitt's in his $42,000 soundproof booth, so he's not going to hear us. It goes to the administration as to who's been chosen to lead the EPA. I'm always proud. I lived in DC for a few years, and I know people that work at the EPA, and they're there doing good work and trying to slow down this anti-EPA movement. And so I applaud them for what they're doing. But when I get into Congress, there's no way that I'm going to let them cut the EPA budget by 31%. If anything, we need to be putting more money into the EPA so that we have a healthy planet for the future. Again, we talked about the carbon dioxide getting to a level that's unsafe. We need to be part of the Paris Climate Agreement, excuse me, again. And so I think that you'll have a champion for the environment here if I get to go into Congress.
Thank you. Yeah, get out, good? All right, Charlotte.
Okay. I totally agree with Jennifer and Peter. Has anyone really ever studied fracking and actually put the information, all the information out on what fracking does? I know there is information out there, but do we ever see it totally? If we did, we would be really scared. I do think in the future, water may be our best commodity. We are going to need fresh water. We need to protect it. This is our earth. It's the only one we have. And when we go down and destroy the earth's shell, what is it doing to our wells, our water system, to our planet? So we need to have an EPA, like Peter said, that will protect our environment, our world, and everyone in it, not just for whatever reason they are there because they were appointed. We need true, dedicated people for the environment. It's the only one we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. So, Sergio?
I'm trying to think if there's anything that any one of the candidates missed. Seemed to be pretty good. I mean, I agree with all of the statements that they had said. We take our water for granted. We're very fortunate in Virginia that we actually have the aquifers. Not all states have the ability to go, I don't have city water, so I'll just go ahead and drill a well. Well, the water's not there. That's the indication. We take that for granted. I've heard a lot of people make the statements, even going all the way to California, water, we're fortunate the water is abundant. And so when we have these programs that come in that do the fracking, even for the pipelines, the indication of the damage. So let's not even say fracking, but even for the pipelines and digging through, dealing over in Roanoke, worrying about what's going on, they say just for digging and doing development destroys those streams, destroys water that you could drink right from the water path. That they're 90% in quality and that you could drink from right there, and there's a concern that just for digging does that. So absolutely fracking is terrible. We need to hold the EPA to standards to keep our water, because it is our world it is our district, and we need to have representatives in there to protect those things, because we don't want to sit there and make sure and have to rely on all of our water coming from bottled water and removing the access from there. So it is, working towards clean energy. We said it before. The statement is still there. We need to work towards clean energy methods and making sure that our environment is safe.
Thank you, Sergio. Any rebuttals on that? Y'all pretty much agreed the whole time. All right. So before I ask this last question, I just want to say this is the second forum that I've moderated. I'm moderating one for the 7th next week. And it is incredible that we're doing that, because that means we have candidates running for all of these things. So I just wanted to say personally, thank you all so much for running. All right, now I'm asked a question that's going to make you mad at me. So this is really what everybody in here, first off, who am I starting with? I forget. You start, so Peter, you're going to start with this one. This is really the question that everyone cares about. Why should they vote for you as opposed to the other candidates that are up here? Y'all all great candidates, but why you in particular? And I know that's getting into a little bit of your closing, but like, what is it about you that they should vote for?
So what is it about me?
As opposed to everybody else, I'm just saying.
Yeah, a comparison, if you will.
Yeah.
So look, I'm born and raised in Roanoke, maybe a little bit far away from here, but we're all in the same district, all in the same area. We have the beautiful Blue Ridge around us, we love where we live, we're here for a reason, and I want to make sure that we're able to do that, and that younger generations are able to do that. We have to make sure that our area is sustainable into the future. And that's what I do every day. That's my job, is to work on how do we create an area that's sustainable, that's thriving economically, that's resilient against climate change in the future. I want to take that knowledge to Congress. But I'm running to be a legislator. And so I know that every ideal that I want isn't going to get through. My job is to go there and be a representative for you. And I've been able to work as a union leader. I negotiated a contract with a large corporation and won. So I have the negotiation skills. I know how to get people on side. I've worked with governments all around the world in my time at the World Bank. I have the skills that you need as a legislator to make sure that we're getting what we need. And so that's why I'm a little bit different from the other candidates, is my life experience. I've been around the world. I've seen a lot of things. I've brought that knowledge back here to the 6th District, and I want to take it and use it up in Congress. And it's not just about our economy and all that. It's about my experience as a human being as well, and seeing about equality. That's why we're all Democrats. We believe in equality. And that's something that I've fought for over and over again, and will bring that with me as well to Congress.
Thank you. Charlotte.
So I served 2 terms on the Roanoke County Board of Supervisors. I know what it's like to work with citizens, to talk to citizens, to defend citizens, to oppose the pipeline. I know what it's like to go to every single board meeting twice a month, 2 times in one day, because we have 2 meetings, to talk to citizens about who come and say climate change is a hoax. It's a UN Agenda 21, it's a land use issue. Every single board meeting they came and said that. I know what it's like to serve on the Virginia Association of Counties Board of Directors and represent every single county in Virginia who was a part of that. I know what it's like just to go to the National Convention for the National Association of Counties, which represents all over the U.S. They talk about infrastructure, they talk about every issue that pertains to each and every one of you. I've served on the Roanoke Valley Regional Commission, which talked a lot about I-81 and the issues there. There are 2 bills I'd like to say that are on the table right now. They won't be presented until 2019 because they've been tabled, about tolls for truck use, and also to have a committee to study I-81 on. I was on the Regional Jail Commission, just many, many commissions and boards, and I've dealt with citizens, and I love Virginia. I love the 6th District. I've lived in Roanoke my entire life. My passion is there. I have the energy to work with you, and I want to be your representative.
Thank you, Charlotte. Sergio.
So I went and got a political science degree, passionate about healthcare, did my studies, that's why I started to run. I determined that the experience that you wanted to have, you're not gonna have that on local level politics. You don't get to go vote on national healthcare. You don't get to vote on our national norms in local politics. And so when I got out with a political science degree, I said, well, I'm really passionate about fighting for healthcare. And that needs to be done on a national level. Now, we've all been involved. I would wager a lot of people in here are involved politically, potentially. Go on out. And if I look at you and said, experience is all it takes for you to be heard. Experience is all it takes for you to matter. I would argue that's not true. Your beliefs, your ambitions, your ability to go out there and test what you believe in, that's what makes you capable and motivated to go and make a change. And I, with a political science degree and the type of candidate I am, the other thing is that if you win the primary and have no chance of winning the general election, well, what good does that do everybody in this room? What does it do for the 6th District? You have to keep that in mind, that you also need an electable candidate that can be successful in the general election. And I've worked to be that type of candidate, reaching out to both sides and building my platform and making the issues, making my policy and making my priorities the issues that affect everyone. And that's why I believe I am potentially could be the most successful candidate for the primary, for the general election, because I have already sculpted myself to be that way, and I am a strong believer in those values. So that's why I believe that I'm the strongest candidate, because I do all the time get candidates, or get, not candidates, I get people in the community, both Democrats and Republicans, and go, I can support that. And that's a big deal, because they look at you and go, you're a candidate I can support.
Thank you. All right, Jennifer.
So I believe that I'm the right candidate for the right time with the right values to clean up Washington right now. I think it's time for a bold, progressive message, and that's what I bring to the table. And why do I think that I'm the one to carry that message? Is because I've been on the front lines for the last 10 years fighting for our shared values, whether it's for the environment, for equality, for whatever it is. I've been there on the front lines organizing people, writing letters to the editor. I used to have a monthly column in the paper, but I had to let that go when I decided to run for office. So I've been out there just raising my voice and my concerns and organizing people on those similar messages as well. So that's why I believe that I'm the best candidate for this race, because I've been there on the front lines, talking with people and getting that message across, meeting with our elected officials. I have all of them programmed in my phone and use them very frequently, as I encourage all of you to do as well. And I do want to be in Congress and be that person that has an open door policy. I repeatedly try to go to Bob Goodlatte's office in Stanton, and I'm greeted by his staffer at the door, and she cracks the door, takes my letter, and then shuts the door. I've literally never been inside that office. So I will also bring to the table having an open door policy where I want to hear from you folks all the time.
Thank you. All right, so I know I probably messed y'all's endings up by asking that question,
Yeah.
but I just want to give you guys an opportunity, 2 minutes, or we said 1 minute, Steve, or we say 1 minute or 2 minutes? 1 minute? Just to say thank you or do a closing statement, whatever it is you guys want to say, now's your time to say it. Do not fight each other, just say whatever you want to say. So if we could we start with Sergio and go back this way, just because at the beginning we started with Charlotte and went that way, so if that's all right. All right, Sergio, you're up first.
So what can I say that I didn't say before? Essentially is that I'm very fortunate and very glad to have even the opportunity to be a representative. It's been difficult at times. It's very strenuous on candidates, and my wife, which is back there. There's a lot of arguments and there's a lot of times we don't see each other. It just happens being on the road. But the thing that I want to say that it's been the most important, and the reason why I got into the race was to help people. And that genuine quality, as I said, we're all up here. I'm sure that we're all, and we have different methods of going about it, but that's what you need to genuinely have in your representatives. To know that they're in it for you, not for corporations, not for big money. It's the fact that what we are saying means that we want to help out the people and we want to protect your rights, your liberties, and do the best that we can to make sure that you have financial security, can go to a hospital if you need to. And I'm hoping that at least at the end that I've relayed that message and could be the most successful candidate in the general election to do that.
Thank you, Sergio. Jennifer.
Good. So first I just want to say thank you for organizing, Steve. Thank you for organizing this. And Tristan, thank you for moderating. And thank you for keeping time. So I want to go to Washington and continue to fight for the things that I've been fighting for. Healthcare for all, a living wage, renewable energy, hemp and marijuana legalization, tuition-free public education, sensible gun reform, and I want to protect and expand DACA and DAPA. Right now, we need bold new leadership. We have a president in office and an administration that probably a lot of you in the room are concerned about and frightened about in a lot of ways. So we need someone to go to Washington to hold him accountable in his administration, and that's exactly what I will do. So I want to thank you all for being here today. It's rough to come out on a rainy Saturday. I don't even know what day it is. But please, we've got a bunch of campaign literature in the back. We have a website, jenniferlewisforcongress.com. We have a headquarters in Stanton at 13 West Beverly if you ever want to stop by. But thank you all for being engaged in this process. It takes people like you showing up to keep us all motivated and to win this election.
Thank you, Jennifer. Peter.
Thank you, Tristan, for moderating. Thank you, Steve, for setting this up. And thank you all for coming out here and doing your democratic duty and listening to all of us talk about our positions. For the last 25 years, our district has fallen further and further behind. Our representative in Congress has failed to act on our behalf. I go up and down the 81 corridor, I talk with people in the district, and they're afraid for their future. They're afraid because 12 of our 19 localities only have one insurer, meaning higher premiums and prices. They're afraid because 1 in 7 of our neighbors lives in poverty. And they're afraid because we've given up our natural resources to outside corporations that don't give anything back to our communities. I think we in the 6th District deserve a better and brighter future. One that we can achieve with strong new leadership that focuses on fresh ideas that will help everyone in our district. That's why I want to make sure that we are creating a healthcare system with Medicare X that works for everybody, and that we're investing in our infrastructure and our education so that we can all have a brighter future. We've got literature in the back. Go to votevolleson.com to join our volunteers. Make a donation if you feel the movement, and don't forget to go and vote on June 12th.
Thank you, Peter. Charlotte.
Yes, thank you all for taking the time to come out today. It really means a lot to hear your questions, your concerns, your issues. I would like to be your voice in Congress because I would like to continue to listen to you and have meetings, face-to-face, actual live meetings when I get to Congress so I can continue to represent you, the ordinary people who put us there, and I would look forward to doing that. Also, charlottemoreforcongress.org is my website, and I have literature in the back too. Thank you so much, and thank you for representing us and asking the questions.
Thank you. All right, y'all. So actually, I did actually think of one more question before I bring Steve up, which is, one of you is going to be the nominee. Will you support that? Is that for me? Was that for me? Will you support whoever the nominee is? So you can just do one word answer. It's fine. It doesn't matter. Just somebody go first and then figure it out.
Sure. I'll go first because I have said this publicly at every forum and every chance that I get. I do believe that, of course, I will be the best representative, but if I do not win the primary, I will work just as hard for any of these other candidates that I work for myself, because it is so important that we get a Democrat into this office. So whether it's me, and I sure hope that it is, I will work just as hard for anybody because it is an absolute necessity that we get a Democrat into this office.
Thanks. Peter, you want to go?
Yeah, I'll keep it short. Yes, absolutely. We have the first opportunity in 25 years to flip this district, and it may not come around again for another 25 years. So I hope that everybody in this room will support whoever the nominee is so that we can make sure that we make it the 6th district blue this year.
I mean, whoever's
Sure.
the Democratic nominee.
Yes.
Yes.
That's assumed. Sean?
Yes, totally. We need to make this a complete blue wave. I agree with Jennifer and Peter. I certainly will support whoever's on the primary ticket.
Sergio?
No. You turn it off on me.
Sorry.
No, I can't say that it will. I won't. There are many good candidates up here, and there are candidates that I disagree with, and that there's been a chain of events that I disagree with. And as far as a candidate with integrity, I couldn't do that. I would have to believe in the candidate that's up there to represent them. It's not just the position that you're in, but the type of person that you are. And so I will support the majority of the candidates up here, but I will not support all of the candidates that are up here.
Something to ask about after the forum is done. All right, so I'm going to bring Steve up now. Again, thank you guys so much for coming out, and give yourselves a round of applause for coming out to this. Thank you so much.
Let us just take a moment to thank Tristan for doing a great job up here. And did a really good job on everything, so thank you. Once again, I need to thank the candidates. You know, these folks have devoted their time and their energy for the last several months, some even longer, to this campaign. And frankly, we know we're in an uphill battle here in this area, but we keep plugging away. Eventually, we're going to turn things around. I think probably Trump is going to be in a lot of ways, has done something unintended for the country, in that he's brought a lot of people out that are now interested. We have candidates turning out for all positions all over the country. So in a backhanded way, we need to thank you for that, I guess. It's an unintended consequence. But again, we just want to appreciate our candidates. And I just wanted to say that I want you guys to know, whoever ends up winning, you know that Warren County is going to be working hard for you. We've got a lot of talent, a lot of energy here, and we'll be plugging for you. So
Thank you, Steve.
good luck. Good luck. I just want to say it's refreshing to hear some alternatives and some good ideas come out, as opposed to talking points like we so often get so many times. Especially, I know TV, it's kind of addictive, but I feel drawn to it. We have to try and keep up. So thanks for having fresh ideas and good alternatives. And like I say, good luck to you all. One quick note. And I want to also thank all of the Warren County people that have helped out, all the communications committee. We hammered out the questions, all the folks that are putting the website together. Our timekeeper, Meredith, thank you. And thanks to the media for turning out. We appreciate getting the word out. So everybody keep an eye out for that. 2 housekeeping notes. We have in case you're not from the area, you're not familiar with it, we have a Wednesday vigil at the gazebo. It's moving from noon, which used to be the time we'd go right after meeting with Goodlots representative. We'd go over to the vigil and show our signs and make our presence known. Where it's now moving to 5 o'clock for the summer hours, so it'll be a little bit cooler and a little more comfortable to do that. And also next Saturday, the Warren County, the monthly meeting is going to start at 10 o'clock, and we will be doing a Grow the Party strategic planning event, which means that we'll have people come in, present their ideas, and hopefully commit to take part in some actions, and getting ready to represent for the candidates this November. The big thing is growing. Like I mentioned earlier, we're going to try and spread out and get our neighbors involved and go on a local level. We're going to reach out 2 or 3 people at a time and get the word out there. So thanks to everybody for attending. Thanks again to the candidates, and take a few moments to talk to these folks. We're a little bit ahead of time, so we've got a few minutes to say hi to these folks, get some literature. Check out our website. There's also some Warren County literature back there, so get informed and get active this fall. Thank you.